I have a question for you. Are you familiar with this movie? Is Paris burning? I mean, there is an affirmative answer to that question according to another film. Yes, it is. Paris is burning. However, the answer to this question in the context of the current film under discussion is no, Paris did not burn. But this is a story from World War II about the city of Paris's fate when it was under the occupation of the Nazis following the fall of Paris in 1940. How long would the Nazis hold that historic and peak cultural treasure under their menacing and toxic grip? The question is answered in the form of this 3-hour epic by director René Clément. And here's a few examples of films that I own that he's directed. Forbidden Games. This is a sadly out-of-print, DVD-only Criterion film that is really powerful, really exceptional, very worth tracking down as a study of the effect of war on young children. Purple Noon, most well known at this point as the director of this film, starring a very young Alain Delon in his breakout performance. And then there's also this film, which I reviewed not that long ago, Joy House, which I really love. And again, strongly recommend that you check this out. Alain Delon does play a prominent part in this film. In fact, there he is right on the back of the slipcover and case. So let me talk about the film just a little bit more. It's a 3-hour war epic about the French resistance in Paris during the waning days of the Nazi occupation. So this is early 1944. Allies have already landed at Normandy. They've done the D-Day thing. They are on the march towards Germany. And the Parisians, especially the French resistance, would really like to have the Allies come down into Paris to help them kick the Germans out. But the Allies have their own agenda. They want to get to Berlin and just finish off this war as quickly as possible, and Paris is not exactly en route. One of the underlying tensions of this film, the other sort of big subplots are the rivalries and different factions within the French resistance. There's a more cautious side of the French resistance that says, let's wait for the Allies to show up and give us the support of their military strength. Nazis still have the advantage of firepower. But the other side, the more sort of radical side, if you will, wants to just fight now. They've been biding their time, waiting. They feel like the momentum is on their side. This is the time to strike. And the other big tension is that the commander of the German forces in Paris is under direct orders from Adolf Hitler himself, who does make an appearance early in the film, to destroy the city of Paris. If there's any resistance, any uprising, or even if you just can't defend the city, just destroy it. Eiffel Tower, Louvre, Champs-Élysées, all the landmarks, doesn't matter. Level it all. Just burn it up and teach them a lesson. If I can't have it, they can't have it either, says Hitler. German commander of Paris, that's his direct orders, and he's got to make the decision as to whether or not he carries it out. Well, history shows that Paris was not destroyed. All of those landmarks, even some that took damage, Notre Dame, which is actually featured pretty prominently in the film itself, those landmarks survived. But how close did it come? How near were we to this ultimate sort of cultural disaster? It's a big production. This is an American and French co-production, and the cast is kind of bananas. Let me just read to you some of the names. Here's the cast, and they list them in alphabetical order. Jean-Paul Belmondo, Charles Boyer, Leslie Caron, Alain Delon, I already mentioned, Kirk Douglas, you saw him on the back of the cover there, Glenn Ford, Gert Frobe, he was the Goldfinger character in the third James Bond movie, so pretty famous face. He's the Nazi commander, and he actually has one of the bigger roles in the whole film. Yves Montand, Anthony Perkins from Psycho, he's actually an American trooper, he fires a bazooka. Simone Signoret, another legendary French screen actress, Robert Stack, and Orson Welles, very memorable Orson Welles appearance as the Swedish ambassador. It's a fascinating cast. Paramount put up a lot of the money, but also the French studio system kind of came together to tell this story, which was based on a popular best-selling book of the time. I don't know how fictionalized it was, if it was written as like kind of documentary or nonfiction, or if it was more of like a plot-driven fictitious account of all of these events. The film has run into some criticism or some flack even for being a little bit homogenized. That the screenplay was credited to Francis Ford Coppola. This is a 1966 film, so this is well before The Godfather and all the other stuff that we think of Coppola now. And also Gore Vidal, a very prominent writer who probably was brought in after Coppola had already been signed on, because Coppola had some problems with the framing of his assignment. Charles de Gaulle was the general of the resistance from a remote location. He was in England during most of those years, and he was part of the cautious side that wanted to team up with the Allies and then, liberate Paris that way. And he was also a very prominent politician at the time that this movie was made. He was the Prime Minister of France and a conservative, on the right side of the political ledger. So he kind of gave directions, or maybe not him directly personally, but the basic idea was that you can't sort of promote or uplift the role that the left side, the communists and the anarchists, had in the resistance, because that was the more radical side, but the contributions of the communists per se were downplayed somewhat at de Gaulle's, preferences, if not orders, due to political considerations. I mean, he was going to be coming up for re-election and all of that. So you got this really weird sort of aura hanging over the production of a very prominent politician who also is depicted in the movie, obviously very sympathetically. He's kind of comes in towards the end and is part of the liberation of Paris, but he's not really there on the streets fighting or even directing, the activities, except to say, wait, hold your line. We'll fight back eventually, but not today. This movie has come under some criticism because of some of the historic revisionism, if you will, but I think it's a really fascinating film because of all of those, complications, if you will, and the fact that you spend a lot of time, within the French resistance. The Americans even don't show up until almost like 2 hours into the movie. They're talked about a little bit, but that's one of the reasons that this film didn't do as well with American audiences. That this movie did big business in France, and that's kind of what perhaps saved the investment. But this was a big film for Paramount Studios at the time. I learned that from the commentary track, which was a very informative track. That really helped me appreciate things about the movie that I kind of maybe missed or overlooked in my first viewing. I will say that the commentary could have been better produced. There are times when they're kind of forgetting things or stammering their words or kind of, talking over each other, some punchlines or some stories that were delivered that kind of meander a little bit or aren't really properly registered. And so, as a guy who's done a lot of podcasting myself, if I was doing a commentary track for Blu-ray, I would probably work a little bit more to polish it up and be ready to make my observations, maybe having some notes or an outline, or even going back to re-record some stuff, because, there's just a few points where it got a little bit distracting, even though, like I say, overall, the guys know their stuff and had interesting and informative things to say about the movie. But is Paris Burning? I definitely recommend that people check this out. It's on Kino Lorber. This is a review copy they sent me. Fascinating piece of work from mid-60s epic roadshow war movies.